Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives.
We can say that the whole of the Gospels is encapsulated in John chapter 3 verse 16. For God so loved the world that he sent his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have life eternal. I remember having read a book, The Cross and the Switchblade, written by Pastor David Wilkerson. Inspired by the Spirit of God, he goes from his hometown to meet some of the deadliest teen gangs in New York. These groups were into all sorts of things: theft, murder, rape, violence. He stood amidst some of those boys and girls with a Bible in his hand. They were jeering and whistling, and he could feel his knees grow weak. He closed his eyes and prayed sincerely to the Spirit of God to guide him. He began saying what was written in John chapter 3 verse 16. For God so loved the world. When he finished that verse, there was a tremendous silence. And when he opened his eyes, he saw many of those teenagers kneeling down with tears running down their cheeks. He did not speak to them of sin, of punishment, of damnation, of eternal fire, or hell, or Satan. He spoke only of God and his love. And that was all that was needed to bring about conversion. The book goes on to describe how so many of these youngsters turned to God and led reformed lives. The power of God's Spirit, the power of God's love is what the gospel is all about. Jesus is the light of the world, and all that we need to do is to take him to the world. There is no other way to undo darkness other than to take light. What we believe, speak, and do are all indications of whether we are carrying Christ into the world. What language do we use when we speak of God? Do we use the language of fear and condemnation? Does fear or condemnation ever have any place in the gospel of God? When we speak of Satan, evil, and punishment too much, it is like speaking of the villain rather than the hero after watching a wonderful movie. Why is the villain getting so much focus? Can't we speak of the hero and his deeds alone and still not win people? What we speak and do are actually speaking of our own convictions of who Jesus is for us. God is not withholding salvation from anyone, no matter what they are. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have life eternal.
Because he lives, I can face tomorrow. Because he lives.